This is the Military Entrepreneur Show, Episode 2 with Heather Dopson. Hello and welcome to the Military Entrepreneur Show. My name is Dan Evans, your host. I had the opportunity to interview Heather Dopson. She is a former Air Force veteran and entrepreneur working in the social media space. She has an incredible story for us today. Let me introduce Heather Dopson. Heather Dopson is a proud Texan living in Arizona who believes she was put on earth to serve others. As an only child, she grew up on a racehorse breeding farm and joined the Air Force in 1992. Her love of excitement and adrenaline led her to a job as a munitions systems specialist for 4 adventure-filled years where she's traveled all over the world, including the sands of the Middle East, and she later moved on to civilian law enforcement. These days, she helps brands understand how to incorporate social media into all facets of their company, and she has an unwavering passion for helping people build their personal brand, whether they are entrepreneurs or employees. She and her dog Private Joker from Full Metal Jacket are working towards becoming a certified canine therapy team so they can visit veterans in the hospital, rehab centers, and other facilities. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be a part of this.
So before we get going on into the interview, could you share a favorite quote with our listeners?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite speakers, his name is Simon Sinek. And my favorite quote from him, and probably of all time, is leadership is not an excuse to do less. Leadership is a responsibility to do more.
Wow, I like that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite. I have it right up on my wall, actually, right in front of me. I should have just read it.
You nailed it. So that's perfect. Tell us a little bit about you, your military service, and where you're at now.
Sure. So I served in the Air Force for 4 years. I enlisted after going to college for a couple of years. I had a scholarship, an ROTC scholarship, and just decided one day that I'd rather enlist. I am very grateful to have been born in the United States, and I recognized my entire life that many people before me fought, shed blood, and died in order for me to just live the kind of life that I'm able to live as an American, as a female living in America. And I thought the very least that I could do is spend a portion of my life repaying that debt. And that's really how I looked at it when I joined the military. I didn't have support from anyone in my family at the time. No one in my family wanted me to enlist, and I actually did it secretly, and it caused quite an uproar. But serving in the military only benefited every other facet of my life.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So the benefits of serving in the military, you did 4 years. 4 years to some may seem like not a lot of time, and to others it may seem like an eternity.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your military service. What kinds of experiences helped you become the woman you are today?
Yeah, so 4 years, to my friends who are now retiring after 23 and 24 and 25 years, doesn't seem like very long. There were so many different things that happened in the military. First, when I went to basic training into tech school, I really thrived on that structure and that discipline because that was something that I didn't have growing up. I was a good kid. I made good grades. I didn't get in too much trouble, or I didn't really get caught. And my parents were really kind of hands off, and so I really needed the structure to help me, the structure and the discipline. And that is what, more than anything else, just understanding what structure means and having discipline to accomplish things was so beneficial to me. But very early on, I had my supervisor, Sergeant Van Mellon. I will never forget him. I'm born and raised in Texas. I grew up on a ranch. I was pretty much allowed to be a wild child and run around. I'm very sassy, and he taught me very early on. He's like, you are not going to be able to talk like that and not get in trouble, because I would kind of talk back a little bit. And he said, we need to teach you the art of tact. And I had never even thought about that or had anybody point that out to me. And so he helped me understand that I can get the same message across and sometimes even more impactful by having tact, as opposed to just being like this hothead or being just a jerk about things. That was really important. The other thing that I learned also is, when we go to school, we choose our friends. We choose who we hang out with. And when you're in the military, you don't get to choose who you spend time with. And even though we all know that we're there together, there sometimes are people that you can't stand.
Yeah.
And there are people that don't like you either. I mean, have you had that experience?
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing necessarily even happened. You just don't like each other. And that's normal in life to not like people. But what I learned is that we don't have to like each other, but we have to work together. And we have a mission to accomplish, and the mission takes priority over everything else. And so that was a really important lesson for me to learn at an early age, that carries over every day. And I say those kinds of things. Listen, I may have only been in the military for 4 years, but those kinds of things are the things that not only have stuck with me, but I continue to share those things and use those in a business setting. I use those in a personal setting. I use those lessons with my friends and colleagues as well.
Yeah, it seems like they pack a whole lot of life experience in just 4 years. I think that's
Absolutely.
like the military's goal. And that's,
So true.
I think, perhaps a misconception from somebody who's never maybe served in the military, that these young folks transitioning out that may be 22, 23 years old have more life experience under their belt, real life, real abilities to use tact, tolerance, teamwork to get the job done. And I think there's a lot of employers that really just don't really understand that. And they don't give these young folks the opportunity that they perhaps deserve. Tell us a little bit more about your career in the Air Force and kind of like what led up to the transition out.
So I had a great job in the Air Force. I chose my job. My first choice was EOD, and I ended up taking my second choice was munitions specialist. So I built bombs for a living. It was fantastic. Anything in the Air Force from 22 caliber bullets all the way up to nuclear weapons fell under my job description. And, here we were in tech school using C4 to blow up all different kinds of things. And my dad asking me if there was any way that I could smuggle a brick of C4 to him. Like, what are you going to do with a brick of C4, Dad?
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said to me. He's like, what are you, the government? Well, kind of, yeah. Uh, but I primarily worked on aircraft munitions and supported the F-111s. So that tells you how old I am. And built lots of aircraft munitions for support of red flag exercises and all kinds of stuff. And then I've gotten to travel, go TDY in support of squadrons of jets and everything. And then I went to Saudi Arabia in 1993 for a temporary assignment where I spent 179 days, which is significant because 180 days you get your short tour, but I was only there for 179 days.
Yeah.
The moment, I'm sure you've had experiences like this, where at the moment when you're in it, it's just not fun. It's miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 14-hour days and then a 2-hour bus ride just to get to the place where we were working. And me, a female, I have to wear, a scarf and an abaya and all that kind of stuff. But looking back on it, it was phenomenal because we were in this place that you get to experience this different culture and you're building this relationship with the people that you're working with and everything. And I loved what I was doing, and I loved being in the military. Absolutely loved it. And what led to my decision to get out of the military is a little bit different. It's not, I had planned to just stay in the military forever. Like that was my goal. I'm just going to retire. I thought, well, I'll finish college and I'll bootstrap and I'll become an officer or whatever. But in late 1994, my boyfriend, the person I was dating, was killed in a motorcycle accident on base on Perimeter Road. And I happened to be TDY. I was on an assignment at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas when it happened. And it was very brutal. And it was this shock. I mean, it was just this ultimate shock. And the Air Force, my commander was nice enough to like find a replacement for the rest of my TDY assignment, and brought me back to my base. And that incident, or that happening, profoundly changed me as a person, and profoundly changed my experience being at that base. And at that time, this is in 1994, there is no discussion of depression, anxiety, PTSD, none of those things. You definitely didn't ask for help, and you just go on about your day. And I had to drive to work every single day, right on the spot where he died. Like
Wow.
Every single day, I had to drive over this spot, and I couldn't really ask for help, or I thought I couldn't ask for help, or I was made to feel like I couldn't ask for help. And my supervisor, when they noticed, I just wasn't like, I didn't really care. I didn't care. Like, what was I was having this existential crisis at the age of 21.
Yeah.
And, they wouldn't send me to mental health, because if they sent me to mental health, that meant I lost my security clearance. And I got knocked down on my security clearance and some of the programs I was involved in. So they wouldn't send me to mental health. They would let me go talk to the chaplain, but that was it. So there was no really like dealing with this. I didn't have the right support system. I had nothing. Like, it was just every day I drive to work over the place where this person that I loved and cared about, his brains were splattered all over the road. I mean, it was just this terrible thing to continually go through. And so they noticed my work performance was not great, and I had a relationship with my commander. My commander had known this had happened, and he's like, we'll get you orders, because it was this like, well, if we just get you out of here and you don't have to be here where this happened, we think that'll be the best for you. And they got me orders to Korea, to Osan, Korea. And it was at the same time that my window was up to make the decision to re-enlist. And I didn't want to re-enlist. I didn't want to be there. And to me, running away to Korea wasn't going to solve anything. But in effect, what I did was I ran away by getting out of the military, and trying to just put all of that behind me. And I, moved back to Texas, and I got a job at Texas Instruments that everybody was excited that I got, and I ended up hating it. I was really unhappy. So my transition out was by choice, but it was by choice through all of these circumstances that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it came to getting a new job, was it difficult for you? Was it easier than you might have expected?
Getting the job at Texas Instruments was, the process was challenging, because they had this arduous process of multiple interviews and all of that. But I was actually pretty surprised at how easy it was for me to get a job. But it was based on the skills and experience that I had from the military and from my specific job in the military. And I do also think that they did look at the fact that I had military experience, but that's a company like Texas Instruments.
Right.
I mean, they're a government contractor to begin with. So I was a little bit surprised at how easy it was for me to get this job.
I feel like, there's a lot of veterans who, really have a lot of opportunities when they get out, and, there's some that wish they had more, especially the infantry guy.
Absolutely. I'm seeing that now with the guys who I worked with, the men and women who I worked with, they're retiring. So they're old. They're my age. I'm 42 years old. So now these guys are retiring, in their early to mid 40s. They've served 20 years or more in the military, and then they can't find jobs, or they can only find a job that's $10 an hour. And it makes no sense to me. I have a friend who retired a few months ago and went on this series of job interviews. And in one job interview, after not being able to get any work, he finally asked the guy, "Do you have any feedback for me?" basically. And the guy told him that he had all the skills and everything, but he was too intimidating and he had this fire in his eyes. And that blows my mind.
Wow.
If you've got this veteran sitting in front of you who has years of leadership experience and has years of experience in this particular field, but you don't want to hire them because they look intimidating, it's so sad to me. And not only that, then there's a stigma, especially for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, that there's this crazy veteran syndrome. And I think that it's a real challenge that our country faces. And I want to help break that stigma of veterans, people transitioning out of the military don't have skills, or they're overqualified, or I want to help break that. I want to help break that cycle, because we have too many people now that are retiring and are separating from the military that have extremely valuable skills, and they need to be employed.
It seems to me like a lot of companies just don't want to invest in training them. They want to hire somebody who's already spun up and ready to go, even though, for the most part, a lot of these folks who transition out are very fast learners.
Yes.
And they have the ability to lead in a team environment. They were taking out squads on patrols and those types of things in a combat zone.
Right. And young,
and making,
very young.
making decisions, life or death situations. Looking back on that whole process of transitioning out, is there anything you would have changed?
Yeah, I probably would have stayed. I would have stayed in. I know that without Jeremy passing away, without that happening, I know that I would have stayed in. I don't know that I would have stayed in for 20 years, but I would have stayed. What I would change too is really having a better plan for after I got out. My head was just in a space of, I just want to get out and I want to get away from here, and I didn't make any plans. Really, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I mean, I'm talking about from like the day I decided I want to get out and I went on terminal leave, and then I'm not getting a paycheck, and I can't go to sick call, and I can't go
Right.
I can't go to the chow hall. Like I didn't have a plan. And so that's probably my biggest thing, is that of all these years of having a mission, having a goal, and creating all of this to meet the mission, and then I just got out like, I'm done.
Just to give you some credit, you were how old when you transitioned out?
21.
You were 21 when you transitioned out of the military.
22.
22.
Yeah. Yep.
When I was 22, I was pretty responsible, but I don't think I would have been capable of coming up with a plan and transitioning out. Like you, I wasn't a troublemaker or anything like that. I needed the structure. That's kind of why I signed up. But despite all of those strengths, I still would have struggled. And I think, the majority of veterans struggle because they don't really know, especially those guys who have, spent 8 to 12 years in the military. That's just long enough to have a complete change of landscape.
Yes.
And especially now things are moving very quickly. I mean, it's almost like the resume is obsolete, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what they're being taught in the transition assistance program, which is just insane to me.
They're still being taught resumes
Yeah,
in yeah, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of time shaping that cover letter and shaping that resume.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and it seems like, you know, a lot of veterans are looked at as, hey, you know, you're good for law enforcement. You're good to work at Home Depot. You're good to work at Walmart. Have you seen those Walmart
Oh yeah.
promotions? It's like, hey, you put a Marine in Walmart. You know, man,
Yeah.
especially as a greeter, you know, he's definitely gonna take that job pretty serious.
Yeah. His boots are going to be laced the right way.
Yeah,
His belt's going to be buckled. His shirt's going to be tucked
and
in.
he's gonna say "Good morning, gentlemen" every time
Yeah.
somebody walks into Walmart, and then it's
Yeah.
gonna scare the pants off of them. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the lessons. You know, we touched on it a little bit, but what kind of lessons did you learn in the military that have really helped you along your journey? I mean, you left Texas Instruments. Was it, did you get into law enforcement immediately after that?
I had an idea that I wanted to go in law enforcement. Even before I joined the military, I wanted to go in law enforcement. And so when I left Texas Instruments, I had this long range goal of I want to be a cop. And I wanted to go into federal law enforcement. So I left Texas Instruments. I went back to college. I talked my college advisor into letting me become a reserve police officer to fulfill my internship for my degree. And so I was in a small town, a reserve police officer at a very small department, I think like 25 police officers, and had all the same duties and responsibilities as a cop who was getting paid. I just wasn't getting paid for
Right.
it. And then got a job at my university with the university police. And then from there went to work at police department in Tucson. So then it was just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But I had always had this kind of idea that I wanted to be a cop. And like you said, that's kind of a natural transition for a lot of veterans, is
Right.
just to go into law enforcement because you're used to that structure and that discipline. And not only that, but that teamwork and that camaraderie. And
Yeah.
I will tell you that when I got out of the Air Force, listen, I spent this short, compressed period of time in the Air Force, but the relationships that I built are lifelong relationships.
Right.
And I explain to people or I try to explain to people who've never served in the military that you will never understand the kind of relationships that you form and the bonds that you form when you serve in the military together. It is not like your college roommate in the dorms. It is not like your high school girlfriend or whatever. Like, you form these bonds. And so before, in this time period where I was going to school and I was working kind of odd jobs and stuff before I became more ingrained in the law enforcement community, I really, really missed that sense of camaraderie and this teamwork. And let's help each other out and let's lift each other up in accomplishing a single mission, instead of like this, like the dog eat dog of the civilian world, right? Of like, I don't care about you. I want to get the promotion, or I want to make more money, so I'm going to do whatever it takes, even if it hurts you. Like, that was really a shock to me. And I think especially for veterans who transition out, like, in this 8 to 12 year or 8 to 15 year period, that is a huge shock. And that's the fear for some of my friends who are retiring now is, now I got to go be a civilian. And
Yeah.
it's a big shock. It's a big change.
What kind of networking advice would you give to a veteran who's transitioning out?
Yeah, so especially now in these times, these are very exciting times because of all the technology that we have available to us. And my advice to someone who is transitioning out would be to start now. Don't wait until after you've already separated. Start making your plans now of what you want to do and the direction you kind of want to go with your life, whether it is to get a job, whether it is to start your own business, well, whatever it is. And the best piece of advice I ever got that I got recently was to make a list of 5 people that you really admire and that you would like to meet in person. And these are people that are in the industry that you want to go into or have businesses like what you want to build. And then start interacting with them on their blog. Create conversations with them in the comments. Don't just write, hey, nice blog post, but actually call out pieces of the blog article that actually resonate with you and start conversations with them. The same on, social media. Follow them on various social media sites. You don't have to stalk them, but have conversations and engage with them with the ultimate goal of being able to meet them in person or to develop a relationship with. I actually did that. Somebody told me to do that probably 5 years ago, I think. And being an overachiever, I made my list of 10 people. And I will tell you that after 5 years, all 10 of those people I consider personal friends. They're
Wow.
people that I engaged with, interacted with. I've met them in person. And that's so important, is to identify who you want to align yourself with and get your LinkedIn profile polished up, man. Like I used to be convinced that Google or Facebook was going to rule the world, and I'm really thinking that LinkedIn might rule the world. Some of the stuff that they've got going on right now and the acquisitions that they've made and everything, LinkedIn can be an extremely valuable place, but you need to have a strategy and you need to use the right kind of tactics, not just sending everybody friend requests or connection requests.
What about being a publisher, positioning yourself as an expert? What kind of advice can you give our listeners there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to build a personal brand. So regardless of what your business is, or if you're an employee, you are the brand. People are going to buy from you or do business with you because they like you. And you want to start creating connections with people. And one of the best ways to do that is to start creating content. It might be writing, it might be videos, it might be podcasting. There are so many different types of content that you can create. And people say to me, I don't know what to write. You write what you know. You write what you know. And if you're not a great writer, that's okay. You'll get better and you'll get feedback and you'll get input. If you're stumped and you don't know where to start by the books that you read or the blogs that you read or the videos that you watch, writing a review. Just go on Amazon and write a review of the book that you just read or even the movie that you just watched. That's a great way to start learning how to write better. And then publishing, whether you have your own blog or you use the publishing platform on LinkedIn to start telling your story. We're not selling anything here. We're just telling a story and starting to share some of your experience and your skills and your knowledge. It's very important.
Yeah, that's something that my wife has been telling me. She's like, well, why don't you just write about all the leadership stories you tell me? And I'm like,
Yeah.
That's a good point. I probably should take some time and write those down. I'm sure people would be interested, about the struggles a 24, 25-year-old, young man in the Marines is facing, that is significant. It would be significant to some, at least some people would read it.
Yeah. Everybody has stories. Everybody.
So really we're moving into a generation of storytelling and marketing yourself as you, because people like to do business with other people, not necessarily with brands. And right now you're working as a consultant independently.
Mm-hmm.
How did you position yourself as a consultant and how did you kind of get into that field?
Yeah, it's a great question. I often joke, I used to build bombs and then I was a cop and now I teach people how to use Facebook. Like it's such a weird transition. But if you know the whole story, it's not really that weird. I just made a decision that I wanted to do something different with my life and I wanted to have control over my life. I wanted to be able to make my own decisions and feel like I was contributing to society. That's my big thing, is that everything that I do, I need to feel like it is moving the conversation forward, or it's providing value to someone, or it's helping someone. I think that if we're not helping each other, what's the point of life? Like, we're here, we're human beings, we're here to help. So I decided many years ago that I wanted to help small businesses, and I started out specifically with realtors. And I recognized then in 2006 and 2007 that the real estate industry as a whole was very far behind in marketing. And realtors were paying for all this technology that they weren't using because they didn't know how to use. And so I started my business and started making money by teaching them how to use the software to create efficiency for them. And then it grew then from not only teaching them how to use their software, but also, hey, there's this thing called the internet, and you could be using it to do some unique marketing. So I taught myself how to use the internet for a variety of things. And I was doing some marketing for a real estate company in Costa Rica. We had a MySpace page. We started using online marketing and social media marketing way before anybody else was doing it. My business and my brand just kind of took on a life of its own. But what I did every step of the way is I started identifying people's pain points, not the business's pain points, but the people's pain points. And when I started being able to provide solutions or to offer help to resolve that pain point, that's when my business got really successful.
Awesome. So maybe it wasn't really an issue for you, but how would you suggest like a veteran who's trying to position themselves as a consultant? And I'll use myself as an example.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the stuff that I do is free, like in the military. But certainly it has a high degree of value for anybody who is on the receiving end of it. And
Right.
it comes down to, increased profits and making money,
Generate
right?
revenue.
Yeah,
Yep.
generating revenue. How would you suggest kind of breaking that down and monetizing advice versus being a consultant?
Yeah. Just, letting somebody pick your brain. I hate that phrase so
It
much.
sounds gross too.
Yeah, I know it sounds gross. Why do people even say it? And then I say it's very expensive to pick this brain. Um, you know, one of the best things that a person can do if they want to be a consultant, and almost everybody has some kind of skill that they can consult on. I mean,
Right.
they really can. It just takes kind of some of that drawing that out. What is it that you're interested in, or what is it that you're passionate about? And one of the best ways really to start being seen as a thought leader or an expert is really to create that content. So let's say you've got your podcast, you've got your blog posts, you've got stuff that you're publishing on LinkedIn, and all of those things then can become something that generates revenue. It might become a book that then later turns into being hired as a consultant or turns into speaking. If you are a person who is not afraid of public speaking, then getting up in front of crowds and sharing your expertise and knowledge. Listen, I did that for years for free, for absolutely free. Anywhere I could speak, anywhere that would have me. I offered free, completely free classes at Paradise Bakery and just invited people to come. I was talking about all different types of online marketing. I did all those things completely for free. And listen, I was at home eating ramen noodles. This
Yeah.
is not a, like listen, there's no such thing as overnight success. There's just not. And but getting out there and being seen and building relationships. So as I was speaking in these free classes, I'm building relationships with all these people, and I am then elevated and seen as an expert, so people start sending me business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a great way for someone like you transitioning. Right now is your opportunity to be creating this content, to be speaking, to be building those relationships. I can't stress the importance of that enough.
Awesome. I think that's definitely very helpful. As far as like resources and education, what blog posts do you read to educate yourself in this field? How do you continue to learn? What are your resources as far as internet marketing?
Yeah. So for me, in what I've chosen to do, it is a rapidly changing business. There's always some new technology, some new platform, and so it could easily consume me and for a while it did. Like, I just need to learn. I just need to learn. And then I realized one day I will never learn everything there is to know. And as soon as I do learn it, it's going to change
Right.
tomorrow anyway. So I just thought, okay, I just need to every single day dedicate, even if it's 30 minutes, to learning something. So for my specific industry, Social Media Examiner is a phenomenal spot, not just for people who work in marketing, but for business owners as well, because it's undeniable the impact that social media has on businesses large and small. And Social Media Examiner is a phenomenal place because they have so many different contributing authors. The same with Social Media Today. Social Media Today, where I see Social Media Explorer as more geared towards small business owners and people in marketing for small businesses. Social Media Today is kind of a step up from that for mid to enterprise level brands. And then my all-time favorite blog, and the blog that I've probably read the longest for the longest number of years, is Convince and Convert by Jay Baer. That is a do not miss blog for sure.
Yeah.
Convince and Convert. Yeah.
Awesome. So if I'm understanding you correctly, anybody who's transitioning out, anybody who desires to start a business, become a business owner, having an online presence really matters.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this challenge. Civilians are somewhat, some of them are protective of their privacy, but even more so, military personnel are protective of their privacy. And so there may be this kind of hesitation of, now I'm going to, put my life online. Well, you don't have to put your life online. You don't have to. I made this transition from being a law enforcement professional where everything is hidden and I
Right.
don't want anybody to know where I am or anything, into creating this brand that is me. And use safety and privacy settings and all of those kinds of things, and be selective about what you're sharing and be smart about what you're sharing. But having an online presence is absolutely vital. Absolutely.
We're going to start wrapping things up. What
Okay.
is your favorite book or books?
So this is a great book. It's called Give and Take. I know it looks backwards to you. This is a phenomenal book. It's Give and Take by Adam Grant. The subtitle is A Revolutionary Approach to Success. So this book is good for anyone. This doesn't have anything to do with my field, but this is talking about getting stuff done. How are
Awesome.
you getting stuff done? And then this is my all-time favorite book. I read this book once every 6 months. This book is from 1996, and it's by Richard Marcinko. I don't know if you know who that is. The Navy people listening should know who this is. Leadership Secrets of the Rogue Warrior. This doesn't matter what industry, what job, what you have. This is a phenomenal book on leadership. And if every manager, supervisor, leader, executive read this book and applied its principles, every company would be amazingly successful and we would all be much better off.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a lot of the frustrations that I've talked to my friends about with their work is because of a leader, that's just not cutting the mustard. So
Yeah. This book, he was a Navy SEAL, and there's more to his story, but this is a phenomenal book.
definitely I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
How can we find you, get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm all over, having an online presence. So if you want to tweet with me, you can. My Twitter handle is at Heather Dopson, and my last name is DOP as in Papa, SON. My email address is heather@heatherdobson.com. I have a website that is under construction right now. It's heatherdobson.com, but I'm really easy to find. And listen, I am really passionate about helping people in general, but I really want to help veterans. That's part of why Joker and I are becoming a therapy team so we can go visit veterans. I believe that if that this country to thrive and be successful, we really have to educate and empower the veterans, the active duty military, people transitioning out, retirees, everything. Just imagine if all Fortune 500 companies were just filled with all these leaders and these fantastic team players from the military. It would be unbelievable.
What an inspiring interview with Heather. I am just so grateful for her friendship, and she is truly an inspiring person. Please check out the show notes at danevansonline.com/Heather Dopson, or check out her website at heatherdobson.com. You can follow her at Heather Dopson. Head on over to the iTunes store if you wouldn't mind and leave a rating for this podcast. I would be truly in your debt if you would take the time to do that for the show. We are trying to get as much exposure for this podcast as possible. In order to do that, we need some reviews. So I am turning to you listeners to hopefully get some reviews out there. And I would be, again, truly thankful if you would take the time to do that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.